Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Mr. Benjamin Boyce to the show. I guess we'll do the spoiler. We just did a half an hour without recording, so we're going to try
deja vu all over again.
We'll start it off light. This is so many thanks to your patience and many thanks for showing up. Where were we?
My pleasure. I was trying to explain the Evergreen State College to your kindly listeners and how I ended up there. But it's basically, it was a college, a state college, very low, very cheap to go there. It was very amenable to what I wanted to accomplish with a degree in via higher education in my mid-30s. I wanted to be a writer, so I went there to learn, to focus on writing and kind of take a few years to really concentrate on the craft of writing. And while I was there, I was exposed to the devolution of higher education into preschool, which was ironic because I had spent the 15 years prior to that in my adult life working largely in preschools as a preschool teacher while I was doing my writing gig, and I was trying to turn kids into adults. And then when I got to college, I watched them turning adults into children by enabling them to act with impunity and to demand very immediate gratification, satisfaction, and so-called grades that they so-called paid for and stuff like that. So what happened in 2017, they underwent a series of radicalization from the top down, kind of workshops and seminars around racial justice and this thing called equity. And that enabled the students to perform like a week or 2 week long protest, which included hostage taking and going from car to car and policing who can say what when, and barricading the library building and stuff like that. And I was there the whole time leading up to that, and in the wake of that, when the internet got a hold of that footage, it's phenomenally cringe, and they made a lot of cringe videos about it. It's just phenomenally cringe. But if you actually start looking at it, you're like, wait, this is all based on this ideology, and this ideology is actually the prevailing ideology of our elite institutions, from Harvard down to Evergreen and the government, which, we have different governments, but it seems like when America sneezes, you guys get dysentery or something like that, right? So you realize that this behavior is directly linked to this Maoist woke stuff that's called social justice, critical social justice, intersectional postmodernism, racial equity, gender ideology. All this stuff is a big mixture, and it's toxic, and it enables incredibly bad behavior. And then it celebrates that behavior. It has the inability not just to chastise or rein in that, but to not adulate the worst actors in any given so-called marginalized group.
Right. Like any political philosophy taken to its utmost extreme, they ended up chasing the Jew with bats.
Yeah, I guess so. Is it always the Jew?
Yeah, if it's the one thing the far left and far right agree on. And especially
throw the Jew down the well.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Well, I mean, I was just speaking with, I don't know, I've been doing a lot of interviews lately. So one person I was speaking with was Malcolm Collins, who runs a show with his wife called Based Camp. And they're phenomenally intelligent human beings. And he was we were going through, because I've been studying this or talking about this social justice / woke stuff for years now, ever since 2017, which is coming up on we're past the 7th anniversary of these events.
Holy shit.
And he was just talking about like their hatred of competence. Just like there's this hatred of competence, and that's why, I don't know if it was Malcolm or not, it was probably somebody else. That's why the Jew inevitably gets targeted, because Jewish culture / genetics, if you want to go there, predispose Jewish people, especially Ashkenazi Jewish people, to high degrees of intelligence and certain ethical principles that forward competent work and being very good at certain jobs that pay very well. Lawyers, and anything having to do with abstract analytic thought, they're just overrepresented. And if you have
things like
a religion,
and high marriage rate, low divorce rate,
Yeah.
raising their
Family
kids,
structures. Yeah.
valuing higher education. Yeah, it's
Higher
just like all
education.
these crazy ideas. A little bit of nepotism thrown in, but
Well, yeah. I mean, why
that's not
not?
necessarily a bad thing. You know, like
Why not?
I'm all for that. Just do it yourself. You know, emulate, don't hate.
Okay, emulate, don't hate. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Is this our segue into your own white nationalist nepotistic
Yeah, that's it.
superstructure
Exactly.
that you're founding? Yeah.
That's where I'm going.
There's money to be made, man. There
for the
are
Canadians.
pyramids to be schemed. That's what I'm saying. Why hold back at all? But yeah, so this religion hates competence, and so it naturally leads to these insane, absurd outbursts like we saw in 2020, which kind of freaked me out. And by 2020, I mean
The
in
Summer of Love?
America. Yeah, in America, we had this incident where a drug addict died while under police surveillance or even under police pressure, and that led
Resisting
to
arrest, I believe, is the technical term.
Was he resisting arrest? It's like the foundational myth of this century, and I don't care enough about it to know all the facts of it. But he was trying to counterfeit.
I watched
20.
the video. I watched the video, and like,
Did you hold your breath?
um,
Did you do the like George Floyd challenge?
I could pass it no problem because I know how to do. I don't know the term for it, but you breathe out like
Lamaze.
you do that,
Oh yeah.
and it oxygenates your blood, and you can hold your breath for like 5 minutes, no problem. So
Okay.
I could
Well,
pass.
there we go.
Yeah, it'd be nothing.
The
for
George
me.
Floyd. Okay, yeah.
But no, he was like, I remember seeing like he was like he got in the car. He's like, get me out of the car, put me on the ground. You know, they were basically doing what he told them to do.
Yeah.
While following protocol, which was put the knee on the back, or
Restrain him,
whatever.
yeah.
Again, and I'm going to get crucified for saying facts.
This
Only
is an
if I
American
go
problem.
out on the street.
Why do Canadians care about America? You guys don't even have black people up there.
We have a couple. I mean, we get the good ones.
Okay, yeah, you have like a filtration process.
well,
this
kind
is
of.
terrible. This is terrible. This
We're
is
gonna
so.
start
Please don't take
strong.
this out of context.
We get the
Do you
French
have any
one.
haters?
We got
Okay.
Haitian. We got.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. The Caribbeans, yeah.
Yeah, Caribbeans and wherever France had colonies in Africa. So
yeah,
we don't have the ADOS or the
American descendants of slavery.
Yeah,
because
we're better than
slave.
you, and we never did that to people.
No, you guys just tortured and slaughtered the indigenous people and
it's
buried them.
Nobody's
under
perfect.
Acorns, yeah. Well,
we just it was just
if you want to conquer a continent, you're gonna have to break
mass
some
graves
skulls.
of kids everywhere.
Yeah, that's an interesting story too.
Oh,
you
God.
guys see, it's interesting. Like you guys have like this kind of would-be attitude towards like being the villains of history too. You're like, can't let America do all the bad stuff. We did some bad stuff too.
Even if we have to make it up. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll flog ourselves, and then we'll do a standing ovation for a Nazi.
We will pray to a pile of rocks and just wish they were dead kids under there.
Oh no, that's so sad. That's sad stuff.
You know, yeah. It's Canada. What can I say? We're special, and we're affected by the U.S. Right, as we were discussing.
Yeah,
we're all culture flows outwards from the epicenter, which is your home country, and we're right next door, so we can't help but be afflicted by it. And
I have a great affinity to normal Canadians. I mean, your government disturbs me. You know, I mean, it's transing kids and then mating them when they're teens. You know, it's like, wait, there's something awry. I just draw the line at like child sacrifice, like child abuse. Like, okay, it's inevitable, but child sacrifice is just like, what is going on when society goes in that direction?
Yeah, it's
really
hard.
by that.
I always try to have that humility to not be stuck in my time and sort of step out and say, okay, how would they look at us from 300 years from now? And I'm like, God damn, we're doing some crazy shit. And it's weird how it's like, again, that hubris to look back, whatever, 150, 200 years without having walked in their shoes and pass moral judgment on these people. And again, so I'm just like, I try to wipe all that programming. I mean, I went to a private Christian school.
Really?
Dad went to public school for 1 year, and I still got it big time. All these sort of the mythology of our time, and this
meaning
like,
what?
Oh,
that you're bad.
That we've got it all sorted out. We figured out everything.
Oh, okay.
Right? Like we cured all the diseases, and it's just it's the. I mean, Lindsay's done a lot of work on this, but whether it's Gnostic specifically or whatever, but that history is always getting better, and we're almost there. We've basically we make no mistakes, and if it weren't for those evil right wingers we would be in the communist utopia right now. And if we just need to all believe it, and then it would happen. And fuck, how, that doesn't really matter.
Technology will be the god of the gaps kind of thing.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Fix it all.
Gulags fix everything.
What was the moment where your fever broke and you had to sweat those sets of ideas out of you, presuming that you did?
It was a long sort of progression. It's weird because I think, like any sort of child, I think we're about the same age. Any child of the 90s, I came on the tail end of Gen X.
Okay.
Born in 79. I think Gen X ends in like 84, but I've read different things. And for us, we were raised on that fight the power, right? Like be against
the
corporations and the government.
Oh yeah.
The being a dissident.
WTO stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the cool thing. And so I've just stayed the same, and then the parties switched. Right?
Yeah.
And now I'm on the right, apparently. And so that I guess that's how that goes. And it's weird because I would be very hopeful for society. Like, I think if you watch everything that's happening now, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, I would have said, well, things go up, things go down, right? The pendulum's going to swing, and naturally it's like all of culture is, say, if you look at the general population, 90% of people just do what the other people are doing, and 9% of people are the influencers, and 1% of people are the thought leaders, progenitors, idea people. That filters, that there's that filtering down mechanism. And so if you have that 1% of people with that, I want to be a dissident, fight the power kind of thing, then what's going on right now should just naturally go away, because the cool, smart, independent people are not going to go for this bullshit. But I think that's a very 90s Gen X mindset. What throws a wrench in those gears is millennials, because they were not raised with that at all. Like, they're no desire that I've seen, and I've raised 4 of them.
Oh,
yeah, no desire to buck that trend at all. Like, they're just like, oh, well, we do what we're told, and we want to be good people, and they, so
you know what it was, man? It wasn't the smartphone; it was anti-bullying.
Yeah,
it all comes down to this anti-bullying push, where everybody's special, and
participation trophies.
Nobody deserves any licks. Mm-hmm. Nobody deserves any criticism, and you should never criticize. And
no, but not even that. Okay, I blame a couple of things. One of the main ones that I never hear anywhere is divorce. If you look at the rates, and again, this is like Fight Club, right?
Okay,
like,
listen. How many wives have you had? I want to know.
One.
Is this anecdotal, Evans? Okay.
One.
How many divorces have you guys gone through?
One, but it was not mine.
Okay. So,
but I was raised by parents who split up.
Really?
Half of my friends were, I think the rates were about 50-50 for our generation. And for millennials, it's probably like 75%. Like, I don't of all our kids' friends, I know very few that come from intact households. So like I was saying, like that sort of Fight Club mantra, right, was talking about, boys from the 90s, where men raised by a generation of women. And now you've got a generation that's even worse than that. So there's no male figure, which is the disciplinarian, the structure, the sort of drill sergeant to some degree, in antipathy to the mothers caring, nurturing. And so what they've grown up with, not only men being villainized and demonized and scapegoated, but then all of culture pushing this sort of femininity without a balancing opposite. And so I think divorce is just thrown on top of that. And then that's where you get the no bullying, the participation trophies. Like, kids don't do chores anymore. They don't. When was the last time I heard someone who had an allowance?
Our kids do.
Okay, well,
they have some chores. One is a really hard worker. The other one's not very particularly gifted at getting anything done, to put it in a specific way.
Yeah.
What was it like being a stepdad? I just stumbled into this like a year ago. I just became a stepdad. Yeah.
Okay. It is the hardest, most. It goes unappreciated. I think it's because it's misunderstood, because you're kind of the odd person out. And so you end up, you get all of the responsibility without any of the authority.
Oh,
and
really?
Again, I've had a lot of discussions with natural parents who say, "Yeah, it's the same deal for me." I said, "Yeah, but they still get that you're not my dad kind of thing." But as a step parent, you'll get that more. I don't know how old your kids are, but it goes in phases.
Yeah,
and
10 and 12.
Okay, so same age as mine were 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And Yeah, it's interesting because the unique challenge of that is that it puts you in a position where you are only judged by your efforts. Like if you don't put in the work, you can't sit back and be like, I'm your father, do what I say. You actually have to earn their respect by being a decent person and having a good relationship with them. And if you can foster that, you know what I mean? Like you don't get anything without earning it. So it's tough, but the challenge is just makes you a better person if you rise to it.
Yeah.
So I fully encourage you to.
Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time working with kids, in the capacity basically as an avuncular
I don't know
human consultant, an uncle. I was basically, like a preschool teacher. I was basically their uncle, just like getting them to, wipe their butts and take care of themselves, and kind of doing it in a gently mocking, humorous and yet chummy way, right? Where's difference like was really interesting on the playground. Like they would, I was the catapult, and the other workers who are all women were couches. So the child would treat the woman like a couch and me like a catapult, and the women would always be kind of like nervous about me because I'd be like rough and tumble play a lot like that. But when the kids would get hurt or something and want a hug, I'm like, I that's not my capacity. I'm not gonna like snuggle you. Like if you want a couch, the boobs are over there. There's no boobs here.
No. And if you were snuggling kids, that would be more of a red flag, I think.
Well, I guess so. Yeah. Which fortunately or unfortunately, that is the case. But just just looking at the relationship that I have with the boys, and their different personalities, and how do I fit in their life? Yeah, 2 boys, 10 and 12, and then how do we connect? And then just it's been a year now, so kind of just developing the relationship and learning how to show the right kind of affection in preparation of what's to come, which is 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and then adulthood. So it's an interesting.
Yeah, and I'll tell you just from I have 1 boy, 3 girls, and the boys are tough at that age, but it actually gets like boys and girls switch at puberty. Girls are great until 13, 14, and then they're like nightmare from hell. Like you lose them for 10 years. In mid-20s, they start to come back. Boys are the opposite. Boys are rambunctious and just, they'll test every limit you have until they kind of start maturing, and then they become your buddy, your ally, if you give them the time. And I can't say this more, like I can't stress anything more than this, at least in my experience. It was they need that strong arm, like close your mouth when you chew, put your dishes away, clean your room, that stuff. But like sit and play video games with them. It's that like meet them on their level, and just chill, just hang out and get just sort of establish that trust. I had more of an opportunity due to other circumstances with our boy than the girls to do that, and incredibly rewarding. I mean, now he's 24. He works part-time for me, which is amazing. Wow. Yeah, he does. He's an award-winning filmmaker. He does all of our videography. And it's extremely rewarding when you get through it. So you have my full endorsement. And there's not a lot of us stepdads. And like I said, it's a thankless job. The reward, you get it. It's just from you. You're not going to get it from society at large.
No.
Like we go. There's no stepdad day.
No. I mean, there's Cuckaholics Month, though.
Yeah, that doesn't.
I'm sorry.
I don't go for that.
Well, I'm just thinking, there's like, I don't like, we were talking about politics and the left and the right, and I don't know if it was in the recorded portion of our.
I don't know. That's the worst part. It's like, how do we go back? And then it feels weird. You're like, this is performative.
Well,
now.
you said you didn't want to be reactionary. I'm like, well, yeah, but you still want to be based, right? But there's aspects of the reactionary right movement that is kind of like
cringe.
This struggle. Well, yeah, it's cringe, but it's this struggle. These young men are struggling with manhood, and they don't quite know how to articulate it, other than like mocking women and then like calling each other cucks, and being a stepdad is like you're taking care of somebody else's offspring. Like, why would you do such a thing? Like, there's this attitude that I pick up that it just seems so, I want to use the word meretricious, but I don't know if I'm using it incorrectly. And if I
Yeah,
want to
don't
use
use that word
something,
because I don't know it either.
yeah, I
God
think
damn,
it's
I
the
thought
right
I had
word,
a,
but
I've read books.
I don't believe you. I think that's just like a portfolio because you like
In
looking
my,
like you
it's in
style
my
yourself
bio.
after Matthew McConaughey from the Contact movie.
That's,
You just walk around with the really important looking book, talking
yeah,
to
yeah.
presidents
I
and
have a
shit.
copy of War and Peace somewhere.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah,
have
I'm
Charles
having.
Dickens' whole thing that's been on my shelf for 30 years.
Oh wow,
Never
it's
cracked
ancient
it.
tome. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
good once you get into them. Yeah.
That's what I've heard. My excuse is that I'm too cheap to buy new spectacles, and I can read for about half an hour, and then my eyes start hurting. So
Yeah.
I
Okay.
just, I spend that time on Twitter where it's important.
So you are online. You said in our earlier conversation that you spend 99% of your life like walking around like the most popular
Yeah,
outcast in
basically.
Quebec, but it's actually much more of your life is lived.
Well, like I said, most of it is well, it's changed really recently since I left my old show. We used to do 1 or 2 live streams a week,
Oh
and
wow.
I was on Twitter all the time trying to build that audience and get
Was
those
this during the
interactions.
great
And
podcast pandemic
no,
where
it was
everybody
it was
just
it
locked
was
themselves inside?
no, it wasn't related to anything specifically. It was just kind of a falling out, and I don't want to speak ill of anyone, so I don't
Oh
bring it
no,
up.
I was asking, was this one of those podcasts that started during the response to the pandemic where everybody started a podcast because they were on Zoom all the time anyways?
Yes and no. It was a friend of mine who'd had a show and had been bugging me for years
Oh
to do
fun.
something with him. And
Yeah.
I think we started before the pandemic, but it just sort
Okay.
of went like that and kind of happened to coincide. But no, there was nothing. It wasn't anything really intentional. And I had no desire to really put my opinions out to the world for in perpetuity. It was just kind of like, well, I don't want to, and I'm very cautious of having
Mhm.
extreme opinions at all, and I do my best to temper that, again, that desire to be a reactionary, and
Come on,
especially
what's your one extremist opinion? Your extremist most opinion?
okay, I'm pro colonization.
Oh, okay. You're not an anti-colonialist.
No, I'm watching, like, especially recently, and again, I hate this. I don't know if we said it before or after, but I don't like to judge the past without having walked in their shoes. I don't have that hubris of like, oh, we've got everything figured out now, but they were so dumb back then. And I think
Yeah.
if you could go back and understand them, like right now, I'm watching the show called The Gilded Age. It's the same guy who made what was that show? It's a British show where they
The
all lived in
Crown.
the no. It was about 10 years
Downton
ago.
Abbey.
Downton Abbey, yeah, which is kind of like historical fiction, right? It's very
Yeah, 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 yeah.
romanticized. It's not specifically accurate, but this one happens in New York in the late 1800s. I don't know, whenever the Gilded Age was, I think 1870s, something like that. And it's interesting because they at least make an effort to sort of put you in that time and place without passing judgment on their social norms. And this one's all about social norms.
Mm.
And so, yeah, when I look at colonialism and at least what I take as the impetus for it at the time, and I'm not going to judge all of Europe with one brush. I think different cultures did it for different reasons, but at least in the more Christian places, I think that there was, if not all of it, some desire was out of like charity, of this idea of like, let's bring Christ to the world and civilization, and
Yeah.
the barbarians, which I just found out actually comes from the Old Greek, because for Baba, which was how they heard the language, because they didn't understand them, so they called them barbarians.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and so I have this sort of, now if you look at, okay, mass immigration, everyone's like, well, we got to let everybody in because where they're coming from are such, as Mr. T would say, shitholes. And I said, okay, well, if places like the majority of South America from most of my lifetime, a bunch of Africa, seem to be incapable of self-governance to the point that we need to let them in here because it's so bad, then why don't we just hold a referendum there? And if more than 50% of the population wants to be here, then we get to govern it for you. Because I would love to live in South America. Like it's not, maybe South Africa too. Beautiful places, right? Like there's no reason other than bad governance that these places aren't just pristine, amazing. So, okay, if you all want to come here, why? What is it about here that you want? Oh, the fact that there's law and order, the fact that there's this sort of great inheritance of English common law that we have. So let's import that. And if we have to do it, it wouldn't be by force because it's 50+1, right? And we all believe in democracy. So,
do we?
Well, we all. Isn't it?
That sounds like a very democratic decision that we just all suddenly just love democracy.
Well, like it's I was going to say again, here's another sort of unpopular opinion. I believe this was before the show, but I was saying that I identified as a libertarian because that was as close as I could come to not identifying as anything. And especially if you watch right now, there's a lot of sort of shit being thrown at libertarians for being idiots and sort of worshiping. It's again like democracy. It's this God that failed. Like it's a great idea, but it doesn't really work in, say, winning elections or running anything. And I think that's because identifying as a libertarian is where the problem is, because it's not a politics. Like for the best I can describe it, it's a limited approach to economics and law within a closed system, a closed and moral system. And it can work as that. But if you identify as it and think that it's going to have some, like that you can take, because, okay, the founding principle, as far as I understand it, is non-aggression. Mm-hmm. So voting's out. How's that not aggression? Yeah. If you vote and you're 50+1, then you impose your will on the losing. So democracy doesn't work. So then what do you resort to? Libertarian dictatorship? Like it doesn't apply to power politics at all.
Decentralization, some sort of ANCAP thing. I don't really understand it. It just doesn't.
Anarchy is the status quo. Anarchy is what that's international politics. That's the guys with the biggest guns win. Hello.
Yeah.
Welcome to Earth.
Yeah.
What's your most
my most
opinion?
Controversial opinion? I don't know if I have any. I mean, it just depends on who I'm talking to. Yeah, there's no such thing as a trans kid, and trans kid is the most evil, fictitious idea at work in the modern world. It's absolutely Moloch level manifestation of Satan at work in the world. I mean, it's just like it's indefensible.
It's super controversial amongst like 5% of the population, and totally normal for everybody else.
It's like a vegan cat. Like we all know who's running cover for the people who are.
Like nobody normal has a trans kid. It just doesn't. Again, because I'm very much
problematic because everybody has a trans kid now. It's kind of normal to have a trans kid.
Yeah, the word normal is fraught. I take that. So nobody with a specific level of beneficial self-development. And soul searching. Okay. Yeah, if that could be a thing. Anyone who's done the self-work.
Oh, the self-work. It's like doing the work, but the self-work.
And not in like the gay retarded way, like the good stuff. Not the work.
Yeah.
Because that's a different thing.
Well, how did you I guess you put up to your Gen Xedness that's where your streak for doing your own self-work and focusing on your own self-work comes from?
Kind of, but I mean, I was that sort of, still am to some degree, that spiritualist lefty. I read Eckhart. I've meditated for years. I got into Buddhism I still agree with a lot of the tenets of it. I don't think it conflicts with the side of me that really understands and appreciates Christianity. I'm still a hippie. Like I'm the 90s free Tibet, man.
Oh, really? Okay.
Why not? Yeah, I can't hurt. Yeah. Free the rest of the world. Put China back. China for the Chinese.
China for the Chinese. Yeah. Canada for Canadians.
Yeah.
I like whatever that means. That's really interesting. I was just reading this article on by this writer named Curtis Yarvin, who used to write under the pen name.
He's a guest on our former show.
Oh, you've
I insulted his shirt.
He's one of the smartest guys in the room, but like one of the worst public speakers. He was really good on Tucker, but he just wrote an article.
He's been getting better.
He's getting better, and he's getting better as a writer, but his article is just still way too long. And he was just talking about colonialism and how anti-colonialism is the new colonialism, and how there's hard power and soft power, and the hard power is you go in and you conquer everybody. And soft power is you send in their missionaries. your missionaries, right? And then convert them, you know. So you have these two different kind of modalities and stuff, and trying to pretend that we're not in a globalist world. I don't know. Trying to pretend that we're not inextricably linked is one question that I have, but at the same time, you know, trying to figure out how to navigate being a individualist slash some sort of having some sort of particularity in time and place and culture and so-called pride in my identity, whatever that means. I'm still a 90s liberal like you, but I understand that when identities get attacked, they need to defend themselves. And one of the ways in which, like, that bullying movement that we were talking about earlier has gotten so much traction is because men, specifically white or European descendant men, have been taken out of positions of prominence, or they have been denigrated such that they don't have the power anymore to exert the values that founded the country. Like there's there was this interesting psychometric chart about, like, there's a certain percentage of specifically white men that are very individualistic and hierarchical at the same time. And those are the people who founded the modern world. Like, they're very individualistic, but then when there's justified power, then they can fall in line and achieve amazing things. And having that vilified and denigrated is what do they call it? Supremacy, or
it's all the names,
right wing stuff, you know. It's like
it's the I call it the Hillary Clinton rundown: the sexist, racist, homophobic, Islamophobic, bucket of deplorables. You're just like a straight white guy who is an individual but still has respect for legitimate authority. And I think that is, you know, maybe not specifically male, but a certain type of men who have that inherent, like, we understand. And again, like, I a lot of my opinions would be taken as sexist, but I have a respect, and that I don't think men and women are the same. Think they. Well,
you've only had one divorce in your marriage, and that wasn't with you, apparently.
Exactly.
So
I'm a Scorpio. Right? We're loyal. Sorry.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. Like, but Scorpion and the Frog says otherwise, like that little fairy tale. You know that one?
Yeah, that's I'm talking astrology. I think it's not related. Oh, okay. I think I will sting your ass if you carry me across the river, but just don't put me on your back and tread water.
I'll be loyal to the day you die.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
I lost my train of thought there.
Yeah, I was losing my train of thought.
Something about men. Yeah, so I think there is something inherent about men and the way that we function, in that we understand, okay, if you're going to win, if you're going to survive, the teamwork is important, and being able to recognize and put yourself subservient to someone who would be a good leader is very important if you want to succeed. If you want to win, if you're in a war or whatever, saying, hey, that guy's stronger than me in this, put him in that position. These guys are good at that. Let's do that. Let's organize in this way. Yeah. And men really function that way. Women do a sort of very similar thing. It's more of a taking down the ones who aren't. And so, especially if you watch the Gilded Age show, it's very much about that female competitiveness in social hierarchy.
Oh, really? Cool.
But also, I think this is what a lot of feminism is that women will collectively bargain. And that's what feminism is. That's women's way of collectively bargaining for whatever they think their best self-interest is, even if it's not in their best self-interest. And obviously we could get into that. There's a big rabbit hole there. Yeah. Look at women's happiness and what's happened since these sort of crazy ideas were pushed artificially or not into the mainstream. And I think it's been massively detrimental to women. And
you could do a whole podcast called The Gilded Age. But it would get really MGTOW really quick. Gelded, like a steer, like.
No, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Well, there's gilded, which is golden, and then gelded, which is, yeah.
They should not be so closely sounding. That's
dude, it's
misleading.
English. What you want? You prefer French? Is that what you're saying?
No. Je prefer langaise. That's how good my French is. Yeah.
Le bouffe.
Le bouffe. So. Okay, but I'm totally screwed up by us missing so much at the beginning.
Yeah, why did you have me on? What was your curiosity about? You wanted to know me.
Because I want to get to know the real Benjamin.
Oh yeah,
A. Boyce.
I'm completely persona. It's persona all the way down.
That's all there is. But I find that because
non grata.
I've watched a ton of your content, and you're an incredible interviewer. You ask great questions. but you don't talk about yourself much. So I was like, okay, this is the show where I want to talk to the people who talk to the people, and get to know you. And I asked you about Evergreen. I still don't know your politics. Do you have a politics? I mean, you sort of
politics is really interesting. I have a deep distrust of the current regime, and I think it's really interesting what's going on in the outer right, as it's called, where you have the techno-futurists or the techno-capitalists, the
like the PayPal mafia, Musk type group.
Yeah, the Muskies, and like the AI guys, and the and the Nick Lands and the Yarvins are over here, and then you have like the theocrats, like trying to do this thing. We're like, well, we know that Christian values are the foundation of Western civilization. Let's try to get back to them one way or another. And then I think the last one is the economics. The economic guys, like the economic libertarians or whatever, where they want some sort of, they think in terms of economics, which I'm least attracted to that way of thinking.
Oh,
yeah. But I like the cross currents of what's going on over there, and the resurgence of like different kinds of political thought and religious political thought and, pagan thought and a lot of things over there, and just watching the energy of meme magic being produced there, which fell in line with 2016 and was really a magical moment of the regime just being played so well against itself, and like the tanking of trust and
can I just
mainstream media? Yeah.
By the regime, do you mean the powers that be?
That's a good question, though. I don't know. But so by the regime, I'm kind of taking a page from Yarvin describing this thing called the cathedral, which is basically the marriage of soft power and hard power, and how like the New York Times and Harvard are much more of a government, much more in charge of government than the government.
It's Rothbard's Anatomy of the State, right? Same. I think it's where he got the idea. That the universities work for the government. That's what they're too legit. It's like the church and state. They replaced the church with the university. That's the new cathedral.
But which is the tail and which is the dog? That's the question. So for whatever reason, they manifestly go in a certain direction. Because I was a Bernie bro, whatever that means.
Same here. Yeah,
I thought like Bernie is good.
The power, right? It meant like I was on board with Occupy Wall Street, and that whole
let's make an honest, the government,
we're the 99%
by the people, for the people, 99% people. And then like later on you're like, well, actually socialism is terrible and Bernie's a total sellout, and the way that the Clinton treated him, and
that he then turncoated and kissed the ring. That was the final straw for me.
Kiss the ring. It's like, here you go. And then you're like, Hillary Clinton. And then that was when I was kind of still on Facebook back then, and I'd ask questions. I'm like, this woman is obviously not a good person. She's just not a good person. She's not good. And then I would be accused of being sexist because it was about her. It was about her vulva and not about her behavior. It's like, okay, well, your soul is purified in the fires of the womb or something. I don't know. Like ovaries give you like a peace out for suiciding people left, right, and center. I don't know anything about that. I'm not a QAnon conspiracist. I'm being hyperbolic.
Well, you only fell out with Bernie because you're an anti-Semite, right? So.
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing. And then I watched this kind of reaction to critical thought happening, and this overwhelming. I was in Portland, Oregon at the time. I was house sitting for somebody, and the neighbors who would have cornhole tournaments every weekend. Do you know what cornhole is? You're raising your hands like it's like an unsanitary thing.
Like TP for I think that's bunghole. Never mind.
That's bunghole. Yeah, cornholes. Yeah, no.
I didn't know cornhole was a thing, but I'm from the Great White North.
Yeah, you guys have crokinole and poutine? Poutine, and the one where you guys like brush ice furiously while a ball travels very slowly.
Oh, curling.
Down it.
Yeah, that's my home. That from my home. That's our bag. Curling curling and polka.
I went to polka, really.
Yeah.
Canadian polka.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, okay. Woolen polka.
Hard.
Great. Okay. Yeah, I went to Bible college in Prince Albert, actually, Saskatchewan. I don't know how far away that is.
You probably went with some of my relatives.
Really? Yeah. Or your cousins or
went to Bible college in Prince Albert.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Small world.
Yeah. No, it's very small up there. It's just tundra for wherever the eye can land.
You've been to Saskatchewan. Yeah. People are like, oh, what do you do there? I mean, we leave.
No, yeah, or you drive. Yeah, you go from one place to another.
We'll drive. Because everything's 10 hours away, so you just drive a lot.
Great.
if you want to do anything other than, it's a great, I mean, it's fostered a lot of great music and some culture because there's nothing to do but get hammered and
Goof
play
off.
guitar.
Yeah, people really
Joni
like their beer up
Mitchell
there.
and all that.
Yeah. I went to Bible college and I learned to smoke and drink up there too at the same time.
Okay, so you can hold your own.
Yeah, my wife says I need to chill out. She wants us to do a dry month.
I did that. I did sober October last year for the first time, and I did all of October, which was great. I was like a 6 to 12 beers a night guy then, and I really enjoyed October. And then this year I did it, and I just didn't stop until Christmas.
Oh wow!
And then since then I've been weekends only. Friday nights. I'm having my first beer of the week. Recording.
Oh, it's Friday,
show.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why you're drinking kombucha or something, and I'm drinking alone. Ben, why are you doing this to me?
It's like got like 2% alcohol or something.
Oh, okay. It has some. All right, as long as
it's
there's
got trace elements.
Pound it.
I mean, I could go to the next room, but I totally lost my thought. And your audience is probably like, what's going on? Or maybe they're acculturated.
My audience is super chill and very like much. They're probably drinking right now.
The regime we were talking about, Bernie we were talking about.
Do you separate, say, the political parties? Like, I don't know how deep you go, because I'll go real deep. Do they run anything, right? Like, who is in charge? And is that what you mean by the regime? Is the regime the elite? And if so, why does it seem like the people who benefit the most from the current system are intent on destroying it?
Yeah. I interview so many people, so there are so many different ways to take this. And so I'm not one of those original thinkers. I can craft a good sentence, but I'm not necessarily an original thinker.
Speaking on that, I was really impressed that you could do Orrin McIntyre and James Lindsay in the same month and sort of just hear both.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that about you.
I'm the true centrist. I'm the true liberal. I'm just highly critical of liberalism, and there's just certain questions. There's just certain questions that haven't been successfully answered about it, or about what it's turned into, and I think it has to do with power.
Yeah, I mean, I went down that rabbit hole for a while too. It's like, was the Enlightenment the beginning of the demise, and is liberalism sort of that in between point between rejecting legitimate authority, which, if you're going to be a true right winger, should be God and a government that represents his supremacy. I think that's if you're going to take the Yarvin approach and go back to. I will not. I have an unbroken chain of never doing an episode without mentioning Yarvin.
Okay, there we go. Here we go.
But yeah, so his thing is, if right wing is monarchy, but I take it a step further and say that monarchy was right wing because it recognized the supremacy of God, and you had that church and state. And so the Enlightenment was the stepping away from that and putting human reason and thought at the pinnacle. And we're going to individualism, nothing collective. And so that from that you get liberalism, and from liberalism you get communism, fascism, and everything that's going to destroy the world.
You get
and
proceduralism. You get
child sacrifice.
You trust the system. You trust the expert. And the expert is guided by expertism. I mean, it's a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, where do they get their knowledge? Well, they signed off on each other's knowledge in this round wheel of roundiness. So
idea laundering, I believe, is the...
That's what Brett Weinstein has coined for it. But I think that God guides humans, and that we are being called toward some sort of evolution or co-volution. There's prompts that we get, there's inspiration we get, we develop, and society develops, and culture develops, and there is, so I don't think that the Enlightenment was bad. I think that when you go back to that quote, I think it was from Adams, but it might have been another guy's, like this republic that we're making is for a specific people. It's for a godly people. What does that mean? It means like a people who assign authority in the correct way to the correct things, and stand in humility and responsibility to that authority, and that we are participating in trying to implement, to the best of our ability, the law that God has put inside of our hearts. And that allows for a certain sort of standing on your feet, and then a certain form of representative democracy, because people are mature and developed morally.
At least
and in their
landowning white
behavior.
men.
Yeah.
And if you want to get into
I
that.
mean, it's interesting that restricting the franchise to married people or to people with children or to landed people is a really interesting idea, and that we can't even talk that conversation really brings up the whole question of like, well, why is democracy so broken?
Let's talk that conversation.
Yeah.
Because again, it's, if you buy into the mythology of our time, then obviously that would be racist and sexist and all the isms and all the bad things. So I've looked at this problem, spent a lot of time contemplating it and sort of saying, okay, well, what are the ways around it? And you could say, okay, net contributors, at least someone who's paying into the system more than they're taking out of it, because then they're going to have some incentive to not get ripped off. And so maybe that way you won't get the isms thrown at you. But at the same time, I'm not opposed to something like Israel, where it is racist, and I'm not opposed to something necessarily being sexist either, because I think if you look at just women's happiness and okay, same thing, like right now when you always have the left trying to push the franchise, right? Like now they want to get it down, and here they've been proposing kind of many times to let 16-year-olds vote because they don't know fuck all. And then they're easier to manipulate. And explain this to my kids, like politics is just a game for power. And the people who pretend they're the nicest are usually the assholes who are stealing the most from you. So don't fall for it. It's really, it's the mob. It's gangsters fighting over your money. And so restricting the franchise to people who are aware of that and maybe want to be a little bit more careful with how it's being spent, and have their, again, I don't think racism is a great thing, but it's not like what I want the person in charge of the public purse to be obsessed with. Like keep that for the charities and,
if you, what was that quote? If you meet one racist in a day, you've met a racist. If you met two racists in a day, you've met two racists. If you met three racists in a day, you're probably the racist, like you're switching out asshole for racist. But, the people who are obsessed with race tend to be the biggest racists on the block.
Yeah. Well, and things go around. I mean, that reminds me of like right now with this stuff. I think it's funny when you hear, because they're all like, oh, he's a felon, he's going to get the black vote. And you hear it on the right. And I'm like, okay, like that's the most racist thing I've ever heard. I might not be wrong, but just to go there, like, okay, that's of all the priorities that'll influence your vote on who's in power. They're gonna be like, yeah, this guy got thrown in jail for
insert
bitch.
the Denzel Washington. I can't remember the movie with him and Ethan Hawke, and there's this meme.
Training Day,
where Denzel's like, my nigga, it's kind of like that kind of feel of that.
Yeah.
And Glenn Lowry, it was Glenn Lowry. I don't know if you know him.
Yeah, very, very well.
Of course you do. He's an amazing man. He was the first black president. He's basically embodied the rap star. Like it's all about the ego. It's all about like the cash money and like the big gold toilets, and like coming out with the bling, and like saying fuck you to society. And it's really interesting that Eminem of all people had such a strong reaction.
Yeah, I know, right? To me, look at De Niro, all these guys, my brain goes automatically to You Diddle Kids. Like there's nothing that explains the visceral reaction to that. It's like they believe the sort of QAnon thing where like he's coming for you and they just lose their mind. To me, it's the only thing that explains derangement to that level when you're someone who should at least have access to decent information, and you should know he's a 90s liberal who ain't gonna do shit.
Yeah. So I mean, you study the Epstein thing and the QAnon stuff, and YouTube came down on me hard when I interviewed somebody who was deep into the QAnon stuff because it was like targeted online harassment or something. Because
You're over the target.
Hillary Clinton's just so vulnerable to criticism that we need to guard her, and we need to guard people from understanding how the medical treatment that was called a vaccine actually works. You're not supposed to talk about that. You're not supposed to talk about why we can't even talk about that. Like I got hit over, I got squashed by YouTube, which is
Listen,
really
just
interesting.
whatever you do, just don't ever look at the correlation between the rates of childhood disease and vaccination. Just don't
really
go there. Yeah.
Yeah, my wife's big on that, and I look at them like, yeah, you know what? I was we were in Austin a few weeks ago, and there was this this Minds conference, and they had a whole big panel on conspiracies, and everybody was just throwing the biggest conspiracies down, and just going full hog with like, we
Nice.
never went to the moon, like
I'm on board.
this thing with the vaccines and stuff, and like it's an interesting way of upsetting priors. Like I remember in the wake of the totally not an inside job destruction of the Twin Towers on September 11th, was it? Of 2001?
Was it? Yeah, something. I heard the date is important.
Yeah, I was told never forget.
Porsche named a car after it. It was that.
Oh, really?
Influential. Yeah.
the Canaan, the Cam.
Yeah, the Cayenne. Cayman. Cayman 11.
What a day!
Yeah.
What a day that was. But there was this really cool. This is really way back in my beginning ventures into the internet. There was somebody put together this documentary, like really exploring all the footage and like really poking a hole in it. And I felt every once in a while, I was really big into reading fiction. Every once in a while, you'd have an author do a world building exercise based on this world, but like just you feel this breaking away and this turning and this being able to see something else, a completely different pattern that was woven from the same facts. And that's the interesting thing about the so-called dissident right, or this collection of thinkers who are against the regime, because what they are doing is trying to reconstruct different narratives or different ways of even telling stories about what's going on. And that the supreme power of propaganda is found in religion. And I don't think propaganda is a bad thing. I think it is. It's recognizing a phenomena of how power operates by unifying meaning around a narrative kind of active action. Like it ties ideas into actions. And that's why when you look at the postmodernist literature or the critical social justice literature, they're really big on this thing called practice. Like you mentioned it earlier,
praxis. Yeah.
The work, they're really trying to, and that's what kind of makes it a religion, or at least fundamentalist in a certain way, or at least jihadist in a way. It's because like they're taking this theory.
Jihad is the perfect word, actually. It is my struggle, right? It's not a set of beliefs. It's the no, but it's jihad, I believe, correctly translated, is my struggle. Funny enough. Yeah. And maybe that's why they got along so well. I don't know.
The struggle session. Yeah.
But it's not just a set of ideas that you adopt. You must enter into praxis.
Yeah. And so the praxis is tied to a vision of history. And so any correct or possible like counter to that is going to be some other story. And so when I talk to James Lindsay at length and I get him to really open up about what he believes the solution is, he goes back to like, well, we have to believe in the Constitution. We have to believe in the founding fathers. We have to believe in the promises of liberalism. Or if you go to R.N. McIntyre, he's like, we have to understand that this stuff was never true. The Constitution was never actually the Constitution. It was just a bunch of pieces of paper, and nobody enforces those things. So ipso facto, it doesn't really exist. I'm still waiting for him to actually say, well, what he wants.
So what's the thing? I get that a lot, especially because my old show really delved into that side of stuff. And if there's so much sophistry around it, I'm like, okay, just explain the fucking thing to me. Like, and say it, don't just talking around it. What's the solution? Because I don't give me platitudes and don't give me, here's this great idea. And I kind of like that, even though it's hard to get specifics out of that crowd. I do like the sort of that juxtaposition between them and Lindsay, and even on your last episode, which is great. I highly recommend it to anyone with Mr. James. When he's talking about communism, and he said that basically it is the antithesis of Christianity. It's Christianity flipped on its head, in that instead of a personal struggle for salvation and redemption, it is a group, and everybody has to get on board, or else it can't work. And so that's what makes communism collectivist, because it's a group with, that's why they end up in gulags, because the only reason it's not succeeding is because there's someone who still doesn't believe it, and you have to eliminate them one way or another, and then we'll get to paradise. And it's this desire to kind of fix the world, right? Bring utopia to earth, which is again very antithetical to Christianity, which is that heaven is beyond, and you're supposed to spend this life sacrificing for the greater thing. But then I look at someone like Lindsay, who is still a staunchly liberal atheist, and I say, well, okay, if you spend your entire career diagnosing communism as the problem and its antithesis being Christianity, where's the disconnect here? You're preaching the gospel. Why can't you take the next step?
Yeah. Well, what is that next step? And he was, that interview, I have this ironically titled 46 hours of Boyce not interrupting Lindsay or something. We've been speaking so much, and we have like 2.5 hour conversations, and it's been like 3 or 4 years that we've been doing this. And I've been able to chronicle his development through a very active, specific part of his life. And in that last conversation, I'm like, we're friends now, so I can give him the hard questions. I said, well, why did you spend the first 20 years of your adulthood breaking down Christianity, only to now be admitting in the episode, he's like, everything that I need to say, Jesus already said. Like he says,
he quotes the Bible a lot. Right?
Yeah, it's like, and more and more and more and more. I'm like, well, why did you do that? It's like, I wasn't humble. Like, well, what is God? And he's like, I think he is following through on his humility to say, I can't believe in what I don't know. This stuff doesn't make sense. To believe in God, what does that proposition actually mean? And I'm like, I have my own opinions on that.
You want to hear mine?
What's your own?
So I'd struggled with that exact same question, being raised Christian and not being comfortable with it until I came to it on my own. It was funny enough. I was thinking about something, and my mother texted me the exact thing I was thinking about at the time I was thinking about it. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. And it was the verse that says, lean not on your own understanding, but on every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. And I was like, okay, I was the Hitchens guy. I was like, I don't understand this, so I can't like fit it into my brain. And then I realized that, no, that's kind of the point, is that faith, faith is the praxis, right? And it's in the praxis. And if you could understand it, if it made perfect sense, then it wouldn't require praxis. And so it's the praxis of faith. It's that if faith is the thing that redeems someone, as far as I know my Bible, and I'm not an expert by any degree. My family went to seminary, they're missionaries, they're pastors, I'm the black sheep. Okay. But I have a tertiary understanding, and that faith is the thing. And so it has to be incomprehensible to require faith. And it's the humility of saying, I don't get it. But I'm going to have faith that if I follow these tenets, and if I put the authority where it belongs, good outcomes will ensue. Well,
Jesus said, he who has eyes to see and ears to hear, right? Mm-hmm. He didn't say whoever has a free frontal cortex that can cogitate, cogitate the loftiness of the logos.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you. That's excellent.
Yeah. One heart can't open another heart. One eye can't clean another. My eyes can't clean somebody else's eyes. My ears can't clean somebody else's ears. Every once in a while, if I'm acting in humility and practicing prayer regularly, then every once in a while, my voice might spark something or trigger something. And that something is like this, it's like when you get that realization, like the Twin Towers or the moon landing, or like, like the system is rigged, like these political awakenings, like there's this other awakening where you kind of just see that everything is bounded together in worshiping the source and the end. Like it's right there constantly. And nothing would exist if that wasn't, because that's what existing is this manifestation of this brilliant process of love and power and light, like descending and ascending through all these different forms. So, but you can't hold on to that vision. You're not supposed to. I don't think so, unless you're really purified. But every once in a while, like you get that. I mean, I got that in my life, and that just like made it so I didn't have to argue or think about God. Like I just had to put it into
Yeah, you
practice.
get it, and then you go
find,
on.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
find the way to plug in properly.
That's because I think I was saying before, like that's how I've sort of seen it in two ways. Like one, there's the Jungian universal subconscious idea, and that we're all that it's this kind of thing that exists. And I'm just from my own, like I remember coming up with objectivism before I'd ever heard of Ayn Rand, and then being like, oh, that's interesting. That's
well, you just sat down and you wrote really, really cheesy novels with tremendously long speeches at the end, and you're like, I've discovered a new writing style.
No, I write as much as I read. Yeah, very little, very little. But I had the idea of looking at the world and not sort of passing judgment. I'd called it isness. Like things just are what they are, and your job is to try to see them as truly as you can, not change them, and adapt yourself to the way that things is or are, whatever. And then so that's one approach. But then there's also, I lost my train of thought. I was saying the Jungian salvation thing. I don't know. I got too many beers.
The Jungian, we were talking about different ways of. Well, I was pushing the conversation out of the realm of discussing what faith is, because I have a problem with faith and belief. I think one of the bigger problems is belief, but go on.
The other one was I read one book on Buddhism when I was, my early 20s, called Buddhism Plain and Simple. I don't remember the author, but I recommend it to anybody because he explains exactly that. He's like, Buddhism, if you look at it, there's all these different strains of it and people get lost in them, and it becomes very legalistic, and like, the 350,000 different kinds of Christianity that there are. And he's like, this book is like, okay, what's the point? What is it? He said, basically what it is a way of understanding that your brain is a tool, and it's a tool that you use to function in the world.
Yeah.
But in that tool, there come thoughts, and thoughts can be bad, and they can be like your brain can be used for good, or it can be corrupted and the most destructive thing in the world. And Buddhism is basically a methodology for, like now they call it CBT, the cognitive behavioral therapy, which is like rewriting your thought patterns, your whatever, the way your synapses fire, these instincts. So when you have like something will happen and you'll automatically go to, I was abused by my great grandfather, whatever, these negative. So it's like, realize that this is a tool and you can write the reactions, and writing them properly. And one of the most important way of that is realizing how kind of time works, and being in, people can make it really woo-woo, but it's being present, realizing future and past, don't get lost in those, be in the now, realize that things rarely hurt while you're experiencing them. Like doing this show, I told you I was nervous before getting on. Now that we're in it, it's a joy. And life is like that, and to stay in the present moment. And so you do things like meditating. The point of meditating, okay, you can have the transcendental stuff, which people, again, get woo-woo with. That's not Buddhism at its core. And maybe you shouldn't even call it an ism. Maybe I should come up with a different name for it. But the point of meditating is to sit quietly and watch the thoughts as they come and recognize them as thoughts, and then place them in the appropriate thing, and learn how to make your brain function properly, and then move on with your life with a properly functioning brain.
Yeah.
That's it. You don't identify with the labels. He described it as a raft. You get on the raft, cross the river, you get off the raft, and you go on your journey. You don't take the raft with you.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
How
did Christianity
I think it's kind of the same.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, okay, have faith. You don't need to, community is important, the church is important, put things in the proper order. And it's for me, it's a way of, like, it reminded me that, like you were saying, but that what God is, the universal thing, recognize that, put things in have the proper structure to your perception of reality, and then that will help you. Then you can take that framework and you can apply it to all the different ideas, like politics or social dynamics or whatever it is. But it helps, like, it gets rid of fear. It gives you just a better life. And so if something works, like I'm a big fitness guy, and I do it because I like the life that it gives me. I enjoy the gym as much as I enjoy the way I look in the mirror after. And it's that process, and you realize that everything's holistic. And so you can't separate one thing from the other. You want to be sane. Exercising helps that, because you clear your mind, taking long walks, and it all works together. And it's like, but I wouldn't define myself as a gymist. Like that's just a part of my day, right?
Yeah.
No, it's a thing that I do. It doesn't make up my me.
Yeah.
It's just, I think it's important. And if you're not doing it, you're probably suffering from something, whether it's a physical or mental ailment. And so like that dovetails closely into a ton of your work. And this is what I really like about you, is you talk about a lot of the sort of the consequences of the ideology that destroyed Evergreen. And transgenderism is a big one. And you don't demonize, because I think there are two kinds of people. There are the victims, which there are a ton, right? These are the kids. These are the kids that are being trans, that are literally, like you said, child sacrifice. And then there are the narcissists. And they're two completely separate groups, in my opinion. I'd like your opinion on this because you've done more work than probably anybody. And I really like the humility that you take going into these interviews and having on these detransitioners, the victims, etc. And what do you agree that it's kind of two separate things, or what's your? Sorry, I know we're over the hour. If you got to go, let me know.
Yeah, that topic. I mean, I decided to go a certain tact with it because of my experiences with the radicals at Evergreen, and then seeing the radicals at Wilfrid Laurier in 2017 that came after Lindsay Shepherd. Yeah, right over there, around the corner from you. But just a 10-hour drive or something.
Yeah, it's just next door.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, these guys control the conversation.
Actually, I think it's in Ottawa, isn't it? Wilfrid Laurier?
Yeah. It's close to Toronto. It's like one of those places that's really close to Toronto, but not Toronto. You killed your microphone. There you go. I guess now I have to pontificate. You just broke the whole internet, man. It's a janky-ass interview, man. Sorry. Have to be an asshole because you can't respond. It's a fucking amateur hour podcast. I'm sorry. But I'll just go and then you can chime in. I just had a thought, and radio silence is a cardinal sin in this position. But when I did the work on Wilfrid Laurier and I saw these people controlling the conversation and taking, these trans rights activists were doing the same thing that the Black activists or the equity activists were doing by claiming that they represent this entire group of people. And they collapsed the entire group of people into their way of thinking. And they were representing this group as narcissists. There you are. And
hello?
Yeah.
I switched it to my computer because my mic just died. Hello. Yeah, okay. Get rid of the mic.
You've joined the Jews in the well, man.
Throw down. You know what? You're a fucking champion, my friend. You are welcome back anytime. Thank you for putting up with my.
No problem. I like.
My professionalism.
Oh no, that's fine.
Where were you? Trannies, something.
Oh yeah. There's just these people who are controlling conversation, and they were representing this group, and they were representing this group as power-hungry, narcissistic assholes that want to control everything and be victims and have all the power and all the victimhood at the same time. It's just like this doesn't add up. I want to have actual conversations, and I'm not going to talk to them. So they can go and control their conversation, but I'm not going to talk to them because they're not interesting to me. I know what they're going to say. I know everything that they're going to say. And I don't want to have those conversations. I want to have an actual conversation and get down to the bottom of why people think the way they do. And so I started interviewing people around the topic of trans, which led me to sexuality and sexology and then research. And then turns out that there's a bunch of conversations to be had about the way that the medical system works, the way that government policy works, the consequences of the civil rights doctrine, or the virtue of fairness and inclusion over everything else, which turns into very exclusive and unfair practices. And then it gets into childhood development and brain development, and then it led me to the detransitioners, and the detransitioners are people, generally young people, who got obsessed with this trans identity and were allowed to go down this path of, state-sponsored self-harm. And, you know, so you do, I guess your question was like, do you see it as the victim group and the villain group? And there are definitely just bad actors there. And there's bad actors in the medical system. There's bad actors in government, and this community is being used. Or no, it's not even a community, because I don't think that the condition actually exists. Trans isn't a thing. It's something that people
Can I play you a clip? Can I play you a
Yeah.
clip that I saw this? You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so because this, my reply to this was exactly that. Let me just see if I can get this going. I want to know your thoughts. Can you hear it?
Okay. Are we okay?
Can you hear it?
No, we're not.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna say this once, and I would just like everyone to respect me. I spent 50 years of my life trapped in the wrong body, and despite any of these misconceptions and rubbish stories that you read in the press, you know, that it's just a lifestyle choice and what have you, it's not. Okay, I felt extremely trapped. I am the transgender person here, and I am annoyed. It's not acceptable.
Would you like me to leave?
Listen,
Would you?
I'm just explaining
No, I'm
to you.
explaining something to you. That was an accident.
I'm sorry. You're being very aggressive here. You've just called me a name in there.
I'm just defending myself. Come
You're,
on,
you're defending yourself. You've just.
Ashley, come on. Not Ashley,
Listen.
India. India.
You just misnamed.
Sorry.
Listen.
Listen. Look, let's all chill.
I can understand why.
I understand why you feel upset.
Look,
and we're
can I
all-
just say something? I don't want to be patronised. I don't want to tap on the head. I am sure there are people in this room now who, when I've been upstairs, said, "Oh, I don't know what all the fuss is
No,
about. It's
actually,
no big deal. I'm in here as a woman, okay?
I agree with that.
Not
I
a he,
respect that.
a she,
Nobody's
a woman.
questioning
Okay,
that.
I'm a real woman, Amanda. I want you to know that.
Yes,
a
darling.
real woman. Okay, I'm
Yes.
glad that's sinking in. I'm going to say it one more time so it really penetrates.
Yes.
I am a real woman. Okay.
Nice.
Annoying.
So if this isn't one of those, like, how do you even describe that? Because it's my
Narcissistic
comment.
rage.
My comment in the reply to that was, you're still in the same body.
Mhm.
Like, there's so much bullshit around the topic. Like, because again, I gotta understand something. I'm gonna look at it and say, okay, make this make sense to me. And from the get-go, the entire concept is insane, and there's no other word for it but insanity. Like, and it's also very religious in that if once you say I'm in a body, that's two, right? That you are not your body. So what are you? Your spirit. So now it's metaphysical, and so you're now not only are you preaching a metaphysics, I must adopt it. So you're evangelizing by force your metaphysical perspective on the world.
Yeah,
that's not, like I'll resort to like faith in a higher power over. Not only is there a you that's in a body, but it's the wrong one.
Yeah,
and it's gender binary. I mean, okay, there's the non-binary, which I guess is the I'm.
and it's not at all facilitated by a sexual predilection towards getting off on the thought of yourself as a woman or other undiagnosed mental health issues, such as the dark triad traits or borderline personality, narcissism, Machiavellianism, which you see all of those displayed right there. This person's like flying off the handle because of somebody disagreeing with them or not seeing them as they want to be seen, which is doesn't even make sense how they want to be seen. Like, what am I supposed to see you as a woman?
The authority,
You're not a
right?
woman. Yeah,
The authority.
you're the authority.
Like,
yeah. So you want to be the man, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
And truth be told, you are the man because you do get to dictate everything. I was just reading this Lancet style guidelines around sex and gender. Lancet is was very prestigious. Either medical or science journal. And that now like you have to understand that it's really problematic to talk about sex in any other than these very specific ways. When we're talking about hormones, have to be really careful that we don't sex things, and sex exists on the spectrum, and you're like, whoa, okay, here we go. And then just like one institution after the other institution is hemorrhaging legitimacy like their blood doesn't clot. And that is the question, like why? Like why are they all doing it at the same time? It's like this weird disease where all of their cells are just exploding.
But cancer is a really apt analogy, right? And I mean, James has some good insights into that. Is that again, I'm a huge fan of the guy, and I do. My one criticism is that I do kind of disagree with his diagnosis. So because again, with this, he says that, well, it's the communists get into an institution and their goal is to call it everything racist or sexist or whatever until they take over, and what they want is power. And then with power, they use that to replicate themselves and create more. And if you look at, it's like, okay, well, are communists bad people, or are bad people just drawn to communism? And so I think he looks everywhere and he sees communists, and I'm like, well, I just see shitty people.
Yeah.
And I think that communism is a very attractive ideology to shitty people. And so that's my one sort of disagreement thing. I'm like, and I think he gets a lot of flack for that unnecessarily, because just okay. And then the next step is like, okay, well, if it's just being shitty people, what makes you a good person? And then maybe he's right with this thing there. It could be Christianity. Or having virtue.
Yeah.
This could go. This is Plato, right? Like this, you can go back pre-Christ and find the concept of not being a douchebag.
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine if there was a cabal, if we're suffering under like this really huge elite conspiracy theory, Klaus Schwab was sitting down with Bill Gates, and they were just like chewing some sort of like beetle root or something, getting mildly high off of some sort of non-hallucinogenic CBD oil or something, And Klaus says,
what's the adrenochrome?
Adrenochrome? It's like you get an aborted fetus and you vape it.
No. You have to induce the child into extreme trauma so that their adrenaline releases into their bloodstream. Then you take their blood, then you drink that blood.
Yeah,
something like that. Or you.
And Klaus is like, I have an idea, fascism, but it's fake, gay, and retarded. And then this is the world we live in.
I'm still, find me the non-fake gay retarded fascism. Like that's the thing. This is where I lose my people go too far right, and I'm like, I'm a firm believer in horseshoe theory. Like you guys, there's nothing you guys don't agree on. You just blame a different group. Yeah, sometimes the same group, especially if you look at right now with the Israel-Palestine thing, and it's whatever. Which is weird because I also have sympathy for the argument, because I think that National Socialism, God send me to hell for uttering the words, isn't that the idea for something like that, like, hey, a government should care about its people and take care, like make sure that they're well taken care of. That's not a crazy idea. It's that when you give it to them, and you'll see it, look at Canada right now. Okay. So we don't have the nationalist part, but we have the socialist part. And like any socialist thing, now we're murdering, state sanctioned murdering sick people because they cost money. Right. And we call it MAID. Yeah. And it's look into the numbers. It's like 15,000 people last year. So this is like,
and they're opening up to teenagers and mental health.
You're depressed
people. Yeah.
I thought during the pandemic, because of what they tried to do is classify vaccine hesitancy as a form of mental disorder. Oh. And then what they were doing is justifying offing the mentally ill. So, you can see where those two things could align.
That's just so wonderful. Right? That's just great. I mean, this is phenomenal. Like, it's just phenomenally like bad.
We're back into Bayer and the camps, right?
Wow. How did you do that?
Perfect cycle. Yeah.
So weird. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. The government's going to have to, we do have to take care of the needy.
To some degree, but
the needful. Yeah.
Well, isn't that the job of the church? Right. And this is where I blame the church, because I feel like what they did is they offloaded all of their responsibilities. And it's like, this is why I left the church. Yeah. And I held that bitterness against God, but it wasn't, it was just the people. And Because I always say, like, okay, well, the church is the community. The community should self-organize. Yeah. And again, adopt whatever philosophy you want. But if what you're doing is offshoring blame for your shortcomings, fuck yourself. Get up, do the hard work, form a community, form strong bonds. Don't leave it up to Trudeau, or it's going to turn on your ass.
Yeah.
Go do it. And that's what the church was. It was the charity.
Yeah.
And as soon as you shrug that responsibility, what do you think's going to happen?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and where do the kids that just without the church, without the doctrine, and there's probably got to be more than just the Christian doctrine, of course, but without the doctrine in Christianity that empowers one through self-sacrifice, through delayed gratification, through responsibility, through certain more or less strict gendered roles that kind of make sense in a large, if you're thinking of human beings more than just like their own little pods of pleasure and pain that shoot through rational existence for 40 years or 50 years or 70 years, you know, we begin somewhere, we die somewhere. But without some sort of higher and deeper philosophy that ties people toward work, they can't be responsible for their own selves, and they're very easily persuaded to just give up more and more responsibility in exchange for pleasure. And then you see Canada driving around with vans. I don't know. Some people argued that this isn't happening, but I had a Canadian addiction specialist on, and she was talking about how these free drug programs, the kids can just walk up and say, I'm addicted to fentanyl, and then they get their fentanyl and then they go sell it, and it's just like this government.
They're being resourceful.
Yeah, they're being resourceful.
Better than taking it.
They're making some bank, they're playing the game to a certain extent, but I bristled a tiny bit when he said, well, but then I was having that conversation because he said the government needs to take care of its people. I'm like, but we do. And then Christianity said, or the church was the thing that was supposed to be doing that, and it failed. I'm like, well, did the church fail? Or did we fail the church?
Right.
Yeah.
Back to personal responsibility. Right.
Yeah.
Because at the same time, Jesus said, "You will always have the poor." Yeah. Give me that sweet, sweet perfume.
Yeah.
And that he wasn't wrong. Like you can't. Yeah. That goes back to another Christian ideal, which is that you don't try to bring utopia here. You try to be responsible and be a decent person. Yeah. But you can't eliminate suffering. That's part of life, right? And this is like. Yeah, I don't know if you ever watched the original Star Trek. They had that episode where they found Paradise Planet, and they lost their fucking minds after like a day. They're like, this is torture, because they were basically in the Garden of Eden, and there was Kirk and Spock, and they were trapped in paradise, and they were like, I need to struggle, I need something to do, right? And that's like the greatest fulfillment in life from anyone who's reasonably mature. Comes from the hardest things you did. It's like being a stepdad. It's going to be the hardest thing you ever do in your life. It's also going to be your greatest sense of accomplishment that you ever get. And that's kind of the point. That's why we're here. I think it was Eckhart. I don't know if he was quoting someone, but he said, I don't know if you're familiar with Eckhart Tolle. He was on Oprah back in the day. And he had a book called The Power of Now, which is all about presence. And in that, I read the quote that you are the once and special, once and only occurring instance of the universe experiencing itself exist. And it's like, so appreciate that. But you've got to be entertained at the same time. And if you just spend the whole time, this is why suicide rates amongst wealthy kids are through the charts, because there's no struggle. And struggle is kind of the point of life. It's rising to the challenge is the deal.
Did we do the whole bullying spiel? I don't
know. You want to do it again?
Unrecorded part? No, I'm just saying, bring back hashtag bring back bullying.
Yeah, exactly.
Toughen the kids
make
up.
It hard.
Titty twisters and Charlie horses.
Yeah, and chores and allowance and paper routes. Bring back paper routes.
I wish my kids had a paper route. They're like, I'm bored. I'm like, go deliver a paper. They're like, what's that? I'm like, here's a cassette
bring back
tape.
Papers. That's the problem.
I give them a cassette tape and a Walkman. I'm like, here's a bike. Get on this and just throw this paper at whoever you meet.
Yeah, and then I have snow where you are?
No.
Oh, so you can't even shovel sidewalks. That's the Canadian pastime of all pastimes. And
mowing lawns.
Will always snow. Yeah, mowing lawns. Go earn. You want the candy? Go out into the community, knock on doors, ask them if they need something done, and learn. Get your knocks that way. Yeah. Anyways, listen, you've been phenomenal. I don't want to keep you any longer unless you're willing to stay, but I'd have to take
No,
I'd have to take a pee break. So
this is great. This is great.
we did.
Time
Not
to
only
end
did
mark.
you do an hour and a half, you did an hour and a half before that just disappeared into the ether. But I feel like we really know each other.
It was a delight to have you on. I'll have you on my channel later on in the summer if you want to come on. And
Anytime,
I let my tie, so to speak, loose a little bit, and I said little things that are a little bit spicier than I normally present them on my channel. So it was kind of fun to do that.
Good. Then I view this as a success. The name of the show is At Liberty, not Liberty. It's At Liberty because you are at Liberty. It's a really clever play on words. Did you?
Oh yeah, that's really clever.
Yeah, I know. It was also kind of a slight because again, the field that I came from just endlessly mocks libertarians, and so I just had to put the word liberty in there to kind of piss them off. It's like, yeah, it's in there, but that's not what I mean because I'm super clever.
Okay. Well, if when you come on my show, I'll have to hear about that drama.
Okay, I got to air it someday. So.
Okay,
that'd be great. Amazing. Thank you so much. Have an excellent evening. You are welcome back here.
You too.
Anytime. And
absolutely.
We'll see you soon.
Yeah. Have a good weekend, dude.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, hang on. Don't leave.
Okay.
I didn't press end yet. It should still be recording. It is. If you like this show, hit subscribe.
Yeah.
Mr. Boyce, can you tell them where to find you?
Oh, yeah. My channel on YouTube is Benjamin A. Boyce, and my podcast versions, mostly of my interviews, are at Conversations at any given podcast.
You have the best thumbnail in podcasts.
Oh, really?
Yeah, excellent.
Oh, great. Yeah, my friend Alistair made it. Alistair Gunn. He's a good guy. He made that.
Gorgeous.
Like, that's great.
I gave up. I just went with white and names. But before that, I did a lot of thumbnails, and yours put me to shame. So as someone who does a lot of work in design, stunningly gorgeous. Yeah.
Oh, really great. I'll tell him that. I'll tell him kudos.
Good. Awesome.
Thanks
all right.
for having
Thank
me.
you, everyone. Absolute pleasure. Hope to have you back soon. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Cheers.